My name is Tasha Murray. I'm the Senior Manager with the Invasive Species Council of Metro Vancouver. We are a not-for-profit organization, and our focus is helping to improve management of invasive species. So we work a lot with multiple levels of government, the public, stewardship groups, contractors, practitioners who are out there managing invasive species and providing support and resources. An invasive species is essentially a living thing that's been moved from somewhere else on Earth because of some sort of human activity and has been introduced to a new habitat. And the nature of invasive species is that they're very quickly able to adapt to the new environment. They are generally very aggressive, they're fast growing, they may reproduce in a number of different ways very quickly, and they can establish themselves and take over a habitat very quickly. And so they're impacting all of the native species that require our habitat to grow. And in many cases, they're displacing wildlife, they're eliminating food sources or forage habitat for wildlife species. Especially in our urban areas, there really isn't a single park or green space that you can go to that hasn't been impacted by invasive species in some way. I'm standing in front of what is probably the most impressive patch of giant hogweed that I've ever seen. It has a sap in all parts of the plant that can be very toxic if you get the sap on your skin. That can cause up to third-degree burns, it can cause blindness. The flowering heads have now turned to seed, and the seeds are now viable. They, could produce new plants if they were to fall on the ground. And it's quite a large and historic patch, so it's been here for many, many years, and it will take many, many years before it can become controlled and be eradicated. So the field of invasive species seems to always be changing. The list of priority species is always getting bigger, it seems. So we're learning about new potential species that might come to our region, but we're also learning all the time about best management practices, or BMPs for short form, and that's sort of the tagline that we use to talk about the best strategy that we know to deal with these particular species in our region. And I always encourage people when they're looking for management strategies to not simply use the internet. It really is important to use local resources, because the nature of invasive species are that they behave differently here than they do in their native environment. The European fire ant is a great example of a species that's been fairly recently detected in BC. So in 2010, we first discovered European fire ants, and it's now found in Fraser Valley, Metro Vancouver, on the island, and a little bit in the interior as well. If I ever get reports of people being stung multiple times by small red ants, it's a clue that it may be the European fire ant. And it's a pretty nasty sting, again, because you're usually not being stung just by one ant, you're being stung multiple times by multiple ants. And we've had cases in our region where people are sensitive to the stings and they've been hospitalized because of anaphylactic shock. So it's a health hazard for sure. And fire ants behave totally differently here than they do where they infest other places and in their native environment. And our control measures and suggested management practices have completely changed in the last 5 years because we have a leading entomologist working on fire ant issues right here in BC. New detections are not usually by somebody like me, although they could be by somebody like me, but I'm just one person. And so part of the reason why we focus on education is that the more people we have that have knowledge about invasive species and what the priority species are, what the watch species are, the better chance we have of detecting an infestation fairly early. We encourage all jurisdictions to have a program in place where all outdoor staff, whether it's parks and trails maintenance or a mowing crew or engineering crew, that those kind of folks have knowledge about invasive species. And even if they can't identify a new invader or something they don't recognize themselves, at least give them the tools so that they can look it up in a book when they get back to their office, or so they can call somebody like me to help them identify something they don't recognize. I think in 10 years, the field of invasive species management may look quite different than it does right now. Our particular focus on species may change, our strategies may change. I think as time goes on, our awareness of invasive species may grow to the point where we may decide that some species we can live with. Maybe, we shouldn't be spending so much time on some of the lower priority species. I am excited about the future. I think we're just going to get better at knowing what to manage and when to manage and how to engage more people.